program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
Be advised that the views and opinions of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
Welcome to this week's episode of Talk News TV here on GNN with your host, Herman Tiu Laurel. Magandang araw po sa inyong lahat at today we go international. Pag-uusapan po natin ang isang sitwasyon sa isang bansa na pwedeng itulad natin sa Pilipinas. We are going to discuss about a country that is very similar to the Philippines, a former colony and a country arising from the poverty of underdevelopment. The difference is the country we are going to discuss today is moving forward in terms of social upliftment, in terms of nationalizing their national resources, human resources, developing their human resources. And we're speaking of none other than the country of the Republic of Venezuela. And it is an honor for us and the network to have the Charge d'Affaires of the Venezuelan Embassy with us, Ms. Yelitza Ventura Polanco. I hope I put that correctly in order. And of course, we have two other guests from the Philippines. One to discuss the lessons of the Philippines from Chavismo, the Bolivarian socialist ideal. And in the second half, we'll have one of the few Latin American experts, Mr. Chibu Lagman, who was with us just a few weeks ago, to discuss also what we should learn and probably also the ramifications for Philippine foreign policy and diplomacy of the developments between Venezuela and the Philippines. So, without further ado, let me go to the Charge d'Affaires of the Embassy of Venezuela in Manila. Ms. Yelitza, how are you?
I'm okay. Thank you very much for your invitation.
Yes, I was just thinking on the way here, although I got caught in traffic among other things today. But so I had time to think while about the history I've had also with the Venezuelan embassy, Miguel Perez Iturbe. Manuel Perez Iturbe was a senior, handsome Venezuelan representative. Now we have a very young, very beautiful
thank you.
representative for Venezuela in the Philippines. And of course, your country has been in the news lately, as you know. There is, and I narrated that in the event you hosted yesterday in celebration or in commemoration of the achievements of the Bolivarian Revolution, and of course the coming March 5, first death anniversary of Presidente and Comandante Hugo Chavez. And I narrated the report of my son from the social media saying, "Pa, Venezuela seems to have a problem. There's this very beautiful lady who was shot in the head and so on." And well, I said, immediately I said, maybe the organizers of the protests were the ones who did that. Because how can they be so lucky? Every time there is a US-sponsored protest, some beautiful woman or some significant person would die in the so-called rallies. Like in Iran in 2009, there's this Neda Soltani or something like that, who was supposed to be pregnant, shot in the heart, and right there in the streets, the cameras were ready to take her picture and so on. But months later, the real Neda Soltani came out and said, "Hey, I'm alive. Why did you put my picture there?" And so on and so forth. No? But so we know there is great maybe the term should be destabilization by some forces of certain areas of Venezuela. But what are your updates on Venezuela right now? How are things, really?
That's true. In the first time, thank you very much for the invitation. It is an honor for me to be here with you in your program and explain to the Filipino people the truth, what is happening really in Venezuela. And in this special moment, all our embassies in the world are organizing activities of solidarity for our former president and leader, Hugo Chavez Frias, and our revolution, in support of our revolution. And then we have now a special situation in Venezuela. The small groups push violence in the streets and try to make a disorder and create the chaos in the Venezuela. And the mass media inform internationally that we have a political and crisis and general one. This one is not true.
It is not true.
It is not true.
There is no general political crisis.
No, it is not general political crisis. It's only focus. Some focus in Caracas and in another cities in Venezuela.
Yeah, where the media can focus. It's always that way.
It's only that way. I'll bring this one. I don't know if
I'll
you
hold
can
it. I'll hold
put
it for
close
you.
here.
We'll have
you
a
can
close-up.
post close.
Can we have a close-up? Kaya ba?
Take a look.
Yes.
This is the
We'll
map.
take a snapshot.
This is the map of my country.
Yeah, just
And the
yes.
small things in color
Yeah.
are the places in conflict there
Yes, yes,
in
yes.
Venezuela.
Yeah.
You can see all the map. We have 23 cities, and then it's only the red ones are the focus, the small focus in Venezuela.
Yes, yes.
For that, the people or the mass media can say it's a general crisis in my country. This one is not true.
That's right. Well,
For that, I bring this one, and I
Yeah.
can show to the Filipino people
That's right.
which one is the reality there.
Well, it's always like that. And the recent turmoil in Ukraine also was centered on Kiev, but you have south and eastern Ukraine. You have such a huge land where the rest of the country is peaceful and stable, but the international media focuses on these centers of chaos that they are creating themselves. Let's ask Rihanna. Rihanna, what is your reaction? Rihanna, of course, is from the Solidarity Network, Venezuelan, Philippine.
Philippine-Venezuela Solidarity
That's
Network,
right.
PhilVensol. And we were formed in 2001, 2002, when we started to get more information in the Philippines about what was happening in Venezuela and the programs of the government of Hugo Chavez. And of course, Hugo Chavez traveled through the Philippines in 1999. We didn't have the opportunity to meet him then. So we started to get this information about these social programs for the poor that Chavez was implementing in Venezuela, and we wanted to know more about it. So we set up this network to get more information and to circulate that information in the Philippines.
Well, I'm sure our audience is wondering what your nationality is, or because that's also the first question of some of the crew here. Is she Filipina? Is she Venezuelan? So we should explain that Rihanna is identified
She's Venezuelan
with the Philippines.
in her heart.
In her heart, yes.
Yeah, she's Chavez also.
Chavez.
Yeah.
And
yo
also
soy
We are
Chale-
Chavez. We
Yo
are
soy
Chavez.
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 Yes,
Yo
of
soy
course.
Chavez.
And also Filipino in my heart,
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the Solidarity Network is a Filipino
Oh yes,
organization.
yes, it's a Philippine organization, and it has support from various universities. It started off actually at Miriam College. It's got a strong base of support in Miriam College, at the University of the Philippines and other schools. Some of the trade unions and the labor organizations are also members of our network. And more recently, we have barangays, who are interested in finding out about the comunales in Venezuela and how the comunales system, what are the lessons for the barangay system in the Philippines.
Well, let's explain to the public.
And women's groups. And of course, women's groups.
But let's explain to the Filipino public that Venezuela is significant because it has actually changed the lives of the poor there. Yalitza or Rihanna, how would you explain to the people what these reforms are that have improved the lives of the poor, and how did this come about? How did this happen? What did Hugo Chavez do to really uplift? For example, 50% of the people have been lifted from poverty. Unlike in the Philippines,
66% is the extreme poverty. We put it down. 66% off.
66% was removed.
From 1998.
From 1998.
1998.
Okay, how was this done in Venezuela?
Our government during this 15 years do a lot for the poor people. The first one, I think Regiana talked about that yesterday, is our constitution. The Magna Letter. This is the first one. Our Magna Letter include a lot of rights.
Rights, okay.
Rights, yes. Since our Magna Letter, we can improve, we can introduce.
So Magna Letter is Magna Carta.
Magna Carta, yes. Carta Magna is in Spanish. I don't know how it is.
Okay, some of us understand Spanish.
Yes, it's a Carta Magna.
Okay.
Yes, we can introduce a lot of social programs in Venezuela. We call social missions for the poor people. Today, more than 20 millions of Venezuelans have a benefits for the social programs. Today, more than 2,500 millions of Venezuelans have access to the universities. Our education is free.
Okay.
Our education is free. We are declared by UNESCO in 2010 territorio free of illiteracy.
All this in 15 years. Before today, how was the illiteracy rate before? 15 years ago.
15 years ago, we have, I don't have the
statistic.
Yes. But we are a territory free of illiteracy today, declared by UNESCO in 2010.
Well, I have some statistics here which I later will read later.
Okay, yes. Perfect.
But I recall, Rihanna, yesterday when you were speaking at the Solidarity event sponsored by the embassy, you said that social justice cannot happen without redistribution of wealth or something to that effect. Can you repeat that today?
Well, I think this is one of the lessons for the Philippines and other countries as well, and that is you can't reduce poverty by 40% or 50% or 60%. You can't increase the minimum wage. The minimum wage in Venezuela has been increased by 2,000% in 15 years. The government has increased the minimum wage by 2,000%. Housewives, now Venezuela has the highest minimum wage in Latin America. Housewives get paid 80% of the minimum wage for their housework. And you can't do this without redistributing wealth. You have to redistribute wealth towards the poor from the wealthy. And that's basically what's happening in Venezuela. And of course they have oil wealth, and that oil wealth is being redistributed towards the poor. And for us, this is a very important lesson in Philvensol to discuss, to think about, and to discuss and to explain. Because we think that's what we also need in countries like the Philippines, to have a better healthcare system, to have universal health care, to have universal and accessible education in the Philippines, to create jobs in the Philippines. We have to redistribute wealth to these programs.
Okay. Rihanna and Madame Chargé, well, what wealth was redistributed in Venezuela?
What?
What wealth? Well, I'll provide the lead. Basically, the real wealth of Venezuela is the oil.
Yes, of course.
And before Chavez, all the money from oil went to the U.S., the oligarchy, the U.S. Stockholders of oil companies. Is that correct?
Before, yes.
Yes, yes.
But we now distribute the
oil revenues.
to the poor people.
That's right.
Yeah, for that we create the social missions.
Yeah, the social missions, or what we would say social programs, right?
Social programs, yes,
yeah.
of course.
And
Oh,
how much is the annual, more or less average oil revenues of Venezuela a year? How much income from oil a year per annum? Would you know how much your country earns in dollars? Well, I have a figure around, because at the highest you had around 97 billion US dollars in 1 year. I think that was 2009. And then it's down to maybe 70 billion today. So average 80 billion dollars per annum, I think. Anyway, I don't know if anybody can confirm. I have some figures here. But it used to go to the U.S. Oil company stockholders, and Chavez nationalized it, the oil industry.
Yes.
Which was not easy, because they tried to stop the operation of the oil companies. Do you recall if Chavez had to pay the American companies to nationalize, to make it owned by the government of Venezuela, the oil industry? How much of the oil industry sector today in Venezuela is owned by the government of Venezuela?
No,
Okay. Anyway, so we know that a lot of the oil sector was nationalized, and that's why Venezuelan government now has the money to spend for the social mission,
programs,
as you
yeah.
say. Yeah. Okay, Rihanna.
I think almost all the oil is with the government, right?
Yes, today.
Almost all
all
the
the oil is from is the government, of course.
Okay, so that's what I mean. Yeah.
Okay. I
that's
didn't
what I
understand the question. Sorry.
Yeah, you can speak Spanish, and we will try to be the one.
Okay.
But Rihanna, we're nearing the end of the first part, and you have to run off to some other activities. What are the essential points you wanted to convey in this discussion?
I think what Venezuela has also done is it's opened up the path, or they're talking about socialism for the 21st century. And what Hugo Chavez, a lesson that Hugo Chavez explained and that the Bolivarian Revolution is an example of, is that you don't have to dream about socialism. You can actually start to build it today. Yeah. And it, in a very practical way, explained what is socialism about. And that socialism is free education and no illiteracy.
And let me add.
Free health care.
Let me add.
Redistribution of wealth.
Let me add.
And the people in power.
Free texting. And is that correct?
It's correct.
All text is free.
Free.
Di para sa mga Pilipino. Yun ang sosyalismo. Yung text walang bayad. Only when you call, there is some charge when you call in the cell phone. Is that correct?
No. You said when you
when
call.
When you text, it's free.
No, you need to pay.
How much?
No. I don't know now in Venezuela.
But it's government owned. It's government owned. The telecommunication.
We have one.
Okay. And then
we have
there's
another
also private.
Private,
Yes.
of course.
Okay.
But all the schools have internet.
All the
right?
schools
All
have
the schools
internet,
have
and we provide the canainitas is the name of the computer. We provide the computer to the
That's right. Yeah.
to the children.
Every child has a tablet.
Of course, also.
Okay. Well,
this one is a new program.
Yeah, we'll continue with that. Last message, we have to take the break.
Well, I think the other thing is also how the people are involved in this process. It's not something that's coming from a bureaucracy. It's coming from the people. And I was in Venezuela twice, and that was the thing that really inspired me. And their basic system is the comunales, which is a little bit similar to our barangays, but our barangays have to be transformed, that the people are in charge.
Okay.
So that's another important lesson.
Thank you, Rihanna. So we'll have you in another session because this was
Thank you.
insufficient, too short. So we'll take our break.